Hi guys, this video is to help you with your language translator program. As always, we're going to begin on the start page and we're going to click on File, New, Project. And as always, remember that you have to click on Visual C# in the left column, Windows Forms Apps in the center column. We need to give this program an appropriate name. Since this is a language translator, I'm going to call it Language Translator. And make sure you browse so that you're saving the file where you want it. That should be your flash drive when you're working in class. I'm going to save mine to the desktop of my computer, and I'm going to click OK. Okay, so here we go. Notice our toolbox is already pinned here. If yours is not pinned to the desktop, make sure you do that. And now let me describe to you a little bit about what this interface will look like. There will be two labels. Labels are just plain old text that are not clickable on the form. And one of the labels is going to give the user instructions. I'll call that the instructional label. And the other label is going to be where the translated text appears. I'll call that the translation label. So we need to make those two labels. If you look in the left column of your toolbox, you'll have a button that says Label. Double click, and notice now I have this itty bitty label here. So I'm going to highlight it, go to the Properties menu, and I would like to do a few things over here. One, I'm going to change the text in that label and write the directions that I want my user to see. What I'd like my user to see is the phrase select a language, and I will say good morning. So I'll get that typed in here, and I may even spell select correctly. There we go. Okay, so there's my new text. Notice it's the directions I want my user to see. Like last time, and again, make sure you highlight the text. Sometimes it unhighlights itself, so just make sure it's highlighted when you're changing any properties. But like last time, I think I want to up my font size a little bit. I don't care for that 8.25 font. So I'm going to bump it just a little bit and make it a 12. That looks a little bit nicer. And this label itself, I want to change the name of it. We're going to refer to this label in our program later on. So I want it to have a name that is a little bit more useful than label 1. So I'm going to go to this name descriptor. Again, make sure this is highlighted. And then where it says name, I'm going to change it from label 1 and call it instruction label. Whoops, what I did there. Okay, I'm going to call that instruction label. Okay, so my label text is changed. I named it instructional label for future reference, and I bumped the font size to make it a little bit more readable. Now I'm going to make my second label, and this one we're really going to have to format quite a bit. So let's bring this little label around. Make sure it's highlighted before you go to the Properties menu. Otherwise, you'll be changing properties on things that are not the label. And I do want to change the name of this one as well. As long as the name is right here, I'm going to change its name. Again, label 1 is not very descriptive. This is the translation label. It's where the translated text is going to go, so I'll call it translation label. Okay. And now there are some settings we have to make sure that we change. If they need to be changed, or if they're in the right setting already, we leave them. But the first thing I want you to look for is the auto size option. And we want to turn this off. So auto size needs to be false here. So when I click on where the true is, you'll notice I get this little arrow on the right. I click on the arrow, and I want to choose false. Okay, that will make this label not auto size down to this itty bitty tiny thing. Again, as we're still changing properties on this label, you definitely want to make sure it's highlighted before you go to the property window. And now I want to look for the border size. So notice where it says border style. I said border size, sorry, border style. I would like a border around this. I'd like it to look like a box on the screen. So again, I'm going to click this, and instead of it saying none, which is the default value, I'm going to choose fixed single. And that will basically just draw a box around the outside of that label. I would also like to change the font on this particular label. Again, I'm not a big fan of that itty bitty 8-point font. So I'm going to change this to maybe a 10-point font. I'm going to make it bold because it's the answer to our translation. Okay, so I have that ready to go. I want my text to be centered. So I'm going to look for something that says text align. There it is. And instead of being in the upper left part of my box, I want it to be in the middle center. So when I click text align, the default value is top left. I'm going to click the value and choose this middle box, and it should change the words to middle center. So no matter how big this box gets, this text will be in the center of it, both with respect to the vertical and horizontal axes. The last thing I want to do is I actually want to erase the text in this. I don't want it to say label 1. I want it to say absolutely nothing. So I'm going to highlight that and erase it, and then click outside. And now I just have this blank box. So now I'm kind of good to go here. I have my 2 labels set up. And now we have to add our 3 buttons. I'm going to have one button that translates the text into Italian, another button that translates it into Spanish, and a third button that translates it into German. So this is basically 3 buttons that we're going to set up in a very similar way to your last project. So I'm going to double click button, and there's my first button. I'll play with font sizes on this a little later, but I think you guys kind of have the hang of that by now. So I'll leave this itty bitty font here, but I do want to name this something appropriate. So again, make sure it's highlighted. I'm going to go to the properties and change the text inside my button. I don't want it to say button 1, I want it to say Italian. This is my Italian button. And I want to name the object for reference in the program and just call it Italian button instead of button 1. Okay, so that's the name of the object, Italian button. And my text inside says Italian. So that's ready to go. Once I do that, I'm ready to insert some code. And what I can do here is I'm going to double click this. And that brings up the code. And if you don't touch anything, you should see the Italian button code right here. And just beneath that, you have your 2 braces, and the cursor should be blinking between those 2 braces. As long as that's the case, you're good to do your code right now. If we click Italian, or the Italian button, I want translation label, which is that box we created that's supposed to display the answer. And notice as I start to type translation label, it's a variable I defined. It pops up in my menu. I want translation label to display some text that says how to say good morning in Italian. So the syntax for that is to say translation label, period. And then I'm going to say equals. And now I just have to type the text that I want it to equal. I do that by typing quotes. And you probably don't know this, but if you had an Italian grandmother like I had, you would know that Italian for good morning is buongiorno. And you spell that B-U-O-N-G-I-O-R-N-O. I think that's correct. And then like most commands that you're typing in C#, you'll notice over here I have this syntax error. It's expecting my semicolon, so I need to put it there. And now I'm ready to go back to the design form. I'm going to click on design. The Italian button is all ready to go. At this point, I am going to create my Spanish button. There's a shorter way to do this that maybe we'll talk about in class, but right now we need practice making the buttons, so I'm going to make the button the same way. I'm going to double click. I'm going to bring my button over here, and notice it draws lines to line up for you. Like last time, make sure it's highlighted. We're going to go to the properties, and again I'm going to change my text. Because this is the Spanish button, I'm going to have the text inside the box say Spanish. And I'm going to make that just a little bit bigger. And a nice little button like my Italian button. And I am going to name this button Spanish button. So I'm going to scroll up, look for name. Here it is. And instead of this variable being called button1 to describe that button, I'm going to be very descriptive and call it Spanish button. And once that's ready to go, you double click it. We're ready to enter our code. Again, make sure you're in the correct spot. You should see the Spanish button code right here. There should be a brace and a space, and the cursor should be in that space. And just like last time, we want, if they push the Spanish button, we want our variable, that label, translation label, we chose that name, to display the text Buenos Dias. So, again, the syntax is the same. Period, text, equals, quotes. And now what I want it to say is Buenos Dias. And I hope I spelled that correctly. And just don't forget at the end we need our semicolon. Once you do that, you can click back on the design form, and my Spanish button is done. One more time. Insert a button. Stretch it out a little bit, make it look nice. Again, you can choose to change the font size when you do your project here, but to save time on your video, whoops, I accidentally clicked that, so I'm going to go back to design. You can change the font size if you choose, just to keep the video short. I am keeping it for buttons since there are 3 of them. I need to change the text for that button. This is the button that's going to display German translation. So I need the button to say German. Okay, so that's ready to go. I'm going to name this button for use in the program button 1, but I'm going to go to the name and rename it German button. Again, the only purpose of these descriptive names is to really make it easy to troubleshoot. If your German button didn't work, it's really easy in your program to find the line that says German button. So that if you're wondering why the descriptive names, it's that simple. So once I have this all ready to go, now I have to write the code to make it actually display the German version of good morning, which is Guten Morgen. So I double click. Again, make sure you see this button, and I see a mistake here. I expected this to say German button, and it does not. So I am going to go right back to design and go up to my name and see what went wrong here. So I called it German button. I double click, and for some reason it's still saying button 1. Okay, so I think I just hand typed this German button text in here. I'm not sure why it wasn't changing automatically. We'll have to keep an eye on that when you guys are programming. But still, I named it German button, so that's what I needed to have here. And now again, the syntax is the same. When we click the German button, I need the translation label. I need to display that text. And the text we want to display is the German text for good morning, which is Guten Morgen. So let's spell that out for you. And again, at the end, we just need our semicolon. And now I'm going to save all. So I've got everything saved here. I'll go back to my form design. If you wanted to rearrange anything at this point, you could do that. I'm just going to go ahead and start and compile this. And we'll just hang on for C# to do its thing. And hopefully we will have a one-word translator running on our screen. So here's the program. I click Italian, it says Buongiorno. I click Spanish, it says Buenos Dias. I click German, and it says Guten, which means that this window could be a little bit bigger. That may happen to you, so our logical thing is to close this window and double click this. Actually, I guess I didn't even need to double click it. I'm just physically going to make this larger. So that hopefully Guten Morgen will fit. I'm going to save all. I'm going to compile it again. And I'm going to go right to the German button, and voila, it fits. And again, Buenos Dias fits, and Italian fits. So you may have to do something like that. But now we have a working program. I hope this helps. Good luck.